After Obi-Wan Kenobi and Qui-Gon Jinn are hijacked to the planet Findar, they find themselves trapped in a world gone mad. The ruling Syndicat controls the people by erasing their memories. The planet's only hope lies with a band of thieving rebels. Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan are caught in a mind war, and if they are not careful, their own pasts will be wiped out forever.
Hello, younglings, and welcome back to Padawan Library, the podcast that dives deep into the knowledge contained within junior Star Wars novels. As always, I am Assistant Librarian Levi Paratic, and with me is Assistant Librarian Tim May. Tim, how are you today?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you doing, Levi?
I'm doing good, too. I've been ingesting some Star Wars content. I gave the Clone Wars movie a rewatch last night.
Oh, that's...
Yep.
You see that more than... You haven't even watched the whole series.
I know. Well,
and
this is kind
rewatched the movie like 500 times. You should just move past the movie.
No. Well, this is kind of a jumping off point to start back into the series, so...
Okay.
So... What I find baffling about the movie is, like, we go to Jabba's palace... and Bib Fortuna's not there, and there's no Gamorrean guards there. What's up with that?
I believe... Yeah, I don't know, because I remember Bib Fortuna showing up later in Clone Wars.
That's weird, and he's in episode 1.
And obviously he's in episode 1. Unless that's just some random Twi'lek. But it's clearly Bib Fortuna.
Right, I agree.
And I'm pretty sure it's canonically Bib Fortuna. I don't have Wikipedia in front of me.
Yeah,
so.
Me neither.
So so you're thinking about actually finally watching through all of Clone Wars? Because you watched what, season 1 and maybe 2? Is that?
Yes, probably season 1 and 2, and then because I was buying them on DVD, and then I just lost track of buying them, and that's how I fell out of it. So it's probably time.
I would say seasons 3 and 4 are kind of the peak, and then the last season that was on Netflix is also very strong. And I'm excited about the new episodes later this year.
Same.
It's very hit or miss. It's a show that I honestly think you could skip about 40% of the episodes, and it would not confuse you, and you would be saving yourself some annoyance. Like, there's some episodes that are very bad, but the episodes that are good are, like, some of the absolute best Star Wars stuff there is.
Yeah.
And, it's just the stuff that feels the most like the movies, for me, anyway.
The movie, I mean, we all know that the movie was just like the first 3 episodes, like, edited together into a movie, and, like, you very much feel that by the amount of just battle between clones and battle droids there is. It gets a little tiring at some points, because there's, like, I mean, there's essentially 3 acts to the movie, and each one has some sort of massive battle in it, and it's just like, okay, this is the same thing again and again and again, so.
Yeah, it's, so that's usually when the episodes are weak, like, because all the episodes are, like, multi-parters, like, pretty much. There's a few standalone episodes, but most of the episodes are, like, 3 to 5 parts. And if the story is, like, compelling and enough for that, like, basically if they have a movie-length story, then it works. But there's a lot of them where it's just, like, they set up some sort of conflict, and then they're, like, 3 of the 5 episodes are just fighting. and that's just, tedious. But
Yes.
there are, some of the stuff in Clone Wars that I love is I love oh god,
Have to think about it.
I know. What is this episode? Oh, I love the Mortis 3-parter at the end of, I think it's at the end of season 3, where they go to this kind of force planet, basically. Have you seen those episodes?
No, I haven't.
Oh, these episodes are incredible, and like some of the absolute best Star Wars stuff there is. I love Ahsoka. Starts out kind of in season 1. I never hated her, but she's not a particularly interesting character. But she is one of the richest non-movie Star Wars characters, and her arc throughout all of Clone Wars, and then spoilers, especially into Rebels.
Yeah, I know.
Is
that's
really
like
amazing.
that's why primarily I wanted to go back, because I was trying to watch Rebels. I have that season 2 that you let me borrow, but I want to rewatch season 1. Can't find season 1 anywhere available to stream at the moment. Only season 4 is available at the moment. So it's they put Clone Wars back on Netflix, so, I guess I'll just watch Clone Wars then. So one thing I did find very funny is, I'm sure a lot of people scoff at this, but the battle droid humor in this movie is very, very funny. There's this moment where this battle droid is reporting to Ventress, and he's just like, Madam Ventress, Count Dooku wants you to report back on the status of your mission, and she's overlooking a cliff, and she just uses the Force to push the battle droid off, and as he's falling, he's screaming, "Why?"
I'm hot and cold on the battle droids. Sometimes I actually do find them funny, and props to Matthew Wood forever, your legend in the Star Wars game. But I just, I don't know, sometimes it's just a little too much,
Yeah, I know that.
Yeah, and it's the same as all the kind of classic problems with the prequels. I agree generally with the consensus, I just don't agree with the severity of the problem, is typically where I'm at. So, and battle droids fall into that. So,
yes. I got something else we can talk about. This isn't the discussion topic that I have. Just this. Oh, hang on, I have a timer going off for some reason. Stop that. I don't know what that was about. Just cut that out.
Yeah, no problem.
How about the Jon Favreau's announcement through Instagram that R5D4 is showing up in The Mandalorian?
This is huge news. Thank you for bringing it up. I went to see Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens, in December of 2015, and I have to say, if I had made a top 5 list of things I needed to happen in that movie, I needed an appearance by R5. Fuck, what was it?
D4.
God damn it. All right. God damn it. I fucked it up.
It's fine.
All right. I needed an appearance by R5B4. And when I walked out of that theater on that cold winter night, my number one problem with that film was what happened with the classic characters, Levi.
I don't know. But finally,
finally, we had to wait
explain.
till episode 9 for Lando Calrissian to appear, played by Billy D. Williams, and now we have to wait for a television show for my boy R5. Anyway, yeah, no, I'm very excited about that. I mean, is it supposed to be the same droid, do you think? Or is it just the same model?
He just posted the photo and then tagged it the Mandalorian. He doesn't say that it's R5D4, but I mean, it looks exactly like R5D4. I guess it also raises questions how did R5D4 get his motivator repaired? How'd he get off Tatooine? But this also made me realize something. Whenever the Sandcrawler is attacked by the Imperials and we see all the dead Jawas, do we see any droids? did the Imperials take the droids with them? There's a good chance they did, and maybe that's how he got off.
That's interesting. I like this idea. I hope there's a whole episode about R5D4. If there's not, the season will be a failure.
I agree 100%. 100%.
What Star Wars stuff has happened in my life? So I was talking. I work as a substitute teacher, and I was talking to some kids, about movies coming out this year that they're excited about. Okay, and I mentioned episode 9, right? And I was talking to maybe 5 kids, and like 2 of them were excited about episode 9. And the other 3 didn't care at all and were all about Avengers Endgame. Ooh. And I have to say, this just made me sad. And I know, whatever, for some people it's like, oh, 2 giant franchises, who cares? It's the same kind of tripe to them. Or they're just, I don't know, like these Kevin Feige is my master now people need to cease. They need to stop. Like the Avengers movies are okay, but let's relax.
I mean, let's not. I feel like if you're comparing Episode 9 and Avengers, and which one of those movies is going to be more predictable, it's Avengers. They're going to be Thanos. Everybody's going to come back, and there's going to be a happy ending. I mean, exactly. I'm sure Episode 9 good will prevail over the dark side, and we'll have a happy ending there. But still,
we don't know where all the characters are going to wind up.
We don't know what's going to happen. Yeah,
I don't know. It's because all those contracts are over for Episode 9. None of them have to come back ever again if they don't want to. We know all the younger Avengers are coming back like immediately. So, but whatever. It is fine. People can like what they like. I don't want to, alienate any of our audience that likes the Avengers movies. I like them, but. I do think it's interesting. Like, we are not that old. I think we've told everyone we're in our late 20s. Mm-hmm. And there is a massive generational shift. Just really, like, I think the fact of the matter is that, I'm curious when, like, the kids that are little now grow up and are teenagers, like, if, like, the new Star Wars movies like Force Awakens and Last Jedi are, like, huge for them in their memory, and like that create a new thing. But I think the teenagers that I work with now are kind of in this weird dead zone where Star Wars really means not that much to them because they were kind of too young for the prequels, if they were alive for them at all. Mm-hmm. And they're obviously too young for the old movies, but now they feel like they're too cool and too old for the new movies, So It's weird talking to them, but they all talk about the Marvel movies like they're not too old and cool for those. Like, come on. Anyway.
Kids.
It's interesting that those are seen as more adult movies. I find that strange, but, whatever. So, you have a topic of discussion for us before we get into our main book.
Yes, I do. Okay. And this discussion here, what do you say? We've known each other for 8 years, going on 9 years now?
Yeah, a very long time.
Okay. This is something that I don't think we have ever discussed, and I don't know about you. Do you remember the first time you saw Star Wars?
Have we not talked about this?
I don't think if we have, I don't know your story.
All right, the first time. Okay, well, it's a little bit fuzzy, but my grandpa Charlie, who was my dad's dad, had a copy of the first movie recorded off of television. This was been like 94, 95. I was 3 or 4 years old. And I remember specific images, seeing those images in that setting. Like, he came to visit us in our apartment, and we watched the movie there. And I remember sitting in that apartment and watching, like, Vader walking down the hall with Leia, and, Obi-Wan dying, and like there's just a few select images that I have a very distinct memory of from that point. I liked the movie, obviously, at that point. You know, I enjoyed it, but I was very young. I was maybe 3 at maybe 4, but probably 3 years old. So I didn't get super into it right away. The movies were re-released on tape in '95, the last release of the original cuts. And I remember watching all of them. I think I watched all of them around that time. But again, I was 4 or 5 years old. And then the big moment, but the thing I have the most clear memory of, I think I saw the movie. I watched them a couple times in that form, like on those copies. And then the thing I have the clearest memory of is when the special edition happened. We went to see the first movie in the theater, and I fell asleep like 15 minutes in. And that was a disaster. And then we watched the movie the next day on tape, which we had at home. And so there's something like that. And then that was the launch of everything. And I didn't see Empire in the theater, but I saw Jedi. And I stayed awake through the whole thing. And I just, 97 is like the real... I mean, I had seen the movies in bits and pieces, or maybe in total before, but that was when I really... where it blew up for me.
It's good. It's a good story. So I
What
feel
about
like,
you?
I saw the movies probably at a similar age, 4 or 5. I remember it was... I was watching TV, and my father was in the kitchen, and my father had an obsession with making Lipton powdered iced tea, and it's one of those teas that you just, like, you put it in a jug, fill it with water, and, like, dump the powder in. And whenever he would mix the tea, it would make, like, this foam on the top, and for whatever reason, I was obsessed with eating the foam on the top. So I was aware that he was making the tea. But then I remember hearing on the TV the Hungry Hungry Hippos theme came on. The commercial was playing, so I ran into the living room to dance to Hungry Hungry Hippos, a game I never owned, by the way. And I ran back into the kitchen, and my father had closed up the tea and already put it in the fridge. He had just scooped all the foam off the top of it and just threw it in the sink. And I threw a fit because I was so pissed that he had done this. So I was crying, screaming, and for whatever reason, I don't know what possessed my father to do this, but we had this big entertainment center that had like cabinets that, we had tape stored in, and this one cabinet, it was like 3 stacks of tapes deep. And he just started digging into this cabinet so far back that I had never myself actually dug that far back into the cabinet. And he pulled out that great VHS box set, the ones with like the flaps that open up in the sides. I don't know what year that one came out.
And the like note from George Lucas.
Yes, yeah, that one. So he pulled that out and then put on A New Hope, which I was complaining up a storm. I did not want to watch a movie, but within minutes of seeing the Rebel blockade runner be chased by the Star Destroyer, I was hooked. And so I watched the movie. I want to say we watched like all... I see, this is where things get fuzzy, but part of me wants to say we watched like all 3 movies in like one sitting. I could be very wrong about that. But then after that, my father took me into our basement, and we had like this partially finished basement, and there were these 2 closets in there. And he goes into the closet, and he's digging through the closet for who knows how long. I had no idea what he was looking for. And he pulls out a Jabba the Hutt action figure from Return of the Jedi. He goes, "Here, I found this at a yard sale for 50 cents years ago. It's yours." And he handed it to me, and that was my first Star Wars toy there. So that's kind of my
incredible
experience. Yeah.
I feel like it's weird because I think for people older than us, or at least people who saw the movie older than us, that's like it was distinct for us. Like we remember who it was that showed it to us and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just such a part of our life, almost from our birth,
Mm-hmm.
that everything's hazy. It's like it feels primordial. It's like, I've been obsessed with King Arthur shit lately. And I just rewatched Excalibur, the John Boorman movie, and like I don't know, like the tone of that movie, the kind of like elliptical, weird nature. Like one of the things that in my own life that reminds me of how that movie feels is just trying to remember when I first saw Star Wars, these early memories that are so formative. Yeah. Appropriate that I reference King Arthur while we're talking about Star Wars.
Yep,
so
I agree. You're going to see The Boy Who Would Be King?
Oh, of course. You're referencing, of course, the new Joe Cornish movie. I was a big fan of Attack the Block. That's a fun movie. And it's weird he took so long to make a new movie. So I'm looking forward to it. And Patrick Stewart playing like Merlin with a Led Zeppelin shirt. That's what I want in my life. So I do need to see it. So when we come back, however, we will be talking about Jedi Apprentice number 3, The Hidden Past by Jude Watson. And please stay tuned.
Hey, you! Yes, you! Are you tired of tossing and turning all night? Waking up and feeling like there's a vibro shiv in your back? Well, come on down to Toydary and Tom's Sleep Couch Outlet. I've got thousands of sleep couches. Sleep couches for Jawas, sleep couches for Otolians, sleep couches for Rhodians. I even got sleep couches for Rancors. Sleep couches starting only at 10,000 credits. And yes, Republic credits will do fine. Don't fall for other sleep couch gimmicks. My sleep couches are made with the finest Wookiee furs in the galaxy. So come on down to Toydary and Tom's Sleep Couch Outlet. With over 8,000 locations throughout the Outer Rim, I guarantee you won't find a finer sleep couch anywhere. Why would I lie? I'm Toydarian.
And welcome back to Padawan Library. This week, we are talking about the third book in the Jedi Apprentice series, called The Hidden Past, once again by Jude Watson, who writes the rest of the series and many more Star Wars books into the future. I have to say, I have really been enjoying this series. This book is my favorite so far by a lot.
Same. Yeah, I agree.
We'll get into all the details, but this one I just thought had like a really great structure. I was very happy with every aspect of it. None of it felt rushed. It felt like a perfect little kind of Jedi story.
Now, one little asterisk here. Okay, so we both agree. Do we both agree that this is the best one in the series so far?
Yes.
Okay. On Wikipedia, they say that this book is co-written by Dave Wolverton. Not that it says anywhere else in this book. So that's just something I want to note for that everybody knows.
Yeah, I don't know where it's not, there's no citation on that, so I'm curious where that came from. I'm not saying it's completely unbelievable. I think he was still writing for them at the time, so, like, he might have helped out finishing the manuscript in front of a deadline or something, but I don't know. Like, I wonder if that was just kind of somebody editing that was thinking, like, based on situations created by Dave Wolverton or something like that, and like they thought they had to do that. It's like it's all based on situations created by George Lucas, actually. So who cares?
Well, whenever we talk to Jude, we'll have to ask her.
Yeah, I definitely want to ask her that question. That'll be somewhere in there for sure. So where we last left our characters, they had just kind of dealt with this big conflict on Bandamir, and everything. And one character that Obi-Wan had met on Bandamir was a Findian by the name of Guerrera, and Guerrera plays a very big role in this book also. So, were you excited to see the return of Guerrera?
I was, because Guerrera was an interesting character because he had an interesting way of speaking, and he, of course, has this catchphrase, "not so." So usually Guerrera starts that joke off by telling a lie or shows some sort of enthusiasm in a bad situation, and then has a break, and then says, "not so." So it was, I didn't know how far they could carry that whole thing, but this book, which we will get into, they took it and ran with it. So
also, the other big development at the end of the last book is that Qui-Gon finally accepted Obi-Wan as his apprentice, which he had kind of been very hesitant to because of Xanatos, his wayward former apprentice, who was kind of the villain of the last book, and I'm sure we'll see again at some point. He does not make an appearance in the Hidden Past. But, so, as the Hidden Past begins, in Chapter 1, they're still on Bandamere, and it's Obi-Wan's 13th birthday, which is, a big deal, apparently, for Jedi. It's like a Jedi bar mitzvah, and so...
I hadn't thought of that.
And they say... like a big Jedi saying that should inform your 13th birthday is attention to the moment gives knowledge. And Qui-Gon gives Obi-Wan a gift. It's a stone from what he calls the River of Light on his home planet. Nobody's saying what his home planet is. I'm curious about that.
Yeah, I looked it up on Wikipedia, and it doesn't say. So.
Oh, interesting. So he's like Yoda. We don't know.
Yeah, it just says unidentified planet. So.
Interesting. So, there's also this kind of birthday ritual that Jedi are supposed to engage in on their 13th birthday. They're supposed to kind of reflect on their life, reflect on good memories, happy memories, and sad memories, and negative parts of themselves, and kind of bring themselves into balance. And Obi-Wan has not found the time to do this. Because Obi-Wan is, he's had so much excitement in the last couple of weeks. The events of the Rising Force and the Dark Rival were crazy. Like, I think they take place in a very compressed period of time.
Right.
And he just hasn't found time. And Qui-Gon, if you look on page 7.
Mm-hmm. I haven't turned to that page right now.
He says, yes, time is elusive. Qui-Gon said, unmoved, but it is best to track it down. Come, the pilot is waiting. They're about to leave the planet. Obi-Wan trailed after Qui-Gon, fighting off a feeling of hopelessness. Would he ever please his new master? Just when he felt Qui-Gon had given him the strong base of trust, he found himself hanging free. Now he realized that the only thing Qui-Gon had ever truly given him was a rock. See, I love this, This, I thought, was very, Obi-Wan is very petulant, and I think he, is still looking to Qui-Gon their relationship has begun in such an unusual way. They're in so much, they're having so, they've had these two, huge adventures, which, at least, it seems like that should not be how you start off your Padawan master relationship. That's more of a, you should kind of ease into that kind of stuff. But, so Obi-Wan, feels like he's beyond his years a little bit, but he's clearly still very immature. He can't even find time on his 13th birthday to do that ritual. So.
Well, anyway, Chapter 2, they get on the ship. They meet the pilot, who we are not given his name yet, but he is a very rude Findian pilot.
All right, now this is something interesting. We are not given his name, kind of. The book acts as though his name is Pilot, capital P, proper noun, Pilot. And I thought his name was just Pilot for we get his real name later, but. I really thought his name was just Pilot, and I was going. I have so many notes just chuckling about that. I can't wait to make fun of this on the podcast. Turned out not to be so, but Obi-Wan immediately is I knew a Findian. Do you know him, Guerrera? And the Findian pilot is just what? We all know each other, and come on, Obi-Wan. They don't. This is Obi-Wan is being a little bit racist here, and it's okay. It's I think within the realm of reasonability for the character at this point. But
right.
Let's relax.
So they get on the ship, And this is where Qui-Gon explains the mission they're going to. They are heading to the planet of Gala or Gala, however you want to pronounce it.
Or Gala.
Gala.
I mean,
it's like the apple.
Yeah, we'll talk about this more later. But yeah. And the idea is to protect the peace for the planet's first free election. Like the ruler is about to die and has agreed we're going to have a free election. The prince who was going to assume the throne is pissed. Prince Behu or Beju? What do you think?
I was calling it Beju.
Let's go Beju. Anyway, but he's pissed apparently, and he might be up to something. So Yoda is sending Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan just to keep the peace and kind of monitor the situation. And on page 9, we have a line from Yoda. Oh no, this is actually not from Yoda. I'm sorry. On page 9, Qui-Gon described his conversation with Yoda. For our first mission together, Yoda has chosen something he thinks will be routine, Qui-Gon told him. Of course, Yoda also says, if routine you count on, disappointed your hopes will be. And I love when the characters in these books quote Yoda, which never, like directly in his syntax, which never happens in the movies.
I know, I agree.
It's very funny to me.
It's like an in joke with everybody where they're just like, oh yeah, Yoda talks weird. We'll just talk like Yoda whenever we're quoting Yoda. So,
yeah, I don't know if that's what's going down, especially at the Jedi Temple. I think Yoda would hear that and would be disturbed. All right, so they take off from Bandamere, and I made a note here. Pilot's name is Pilot. Is it a real name? Ho ho ho.
So, they jump out of light speed all of a sudden because they have a fuel leak going and they have to make an emergency landing. However, the planet Qui-Gon's just like, what planet are we near? And Pilot's like, I'm too busy. I can't tell you. And so he's trying to make contact with the planet. The planet's saying, no, you cannot land here. They're being chased by 2 starfighters, but they have to make this emergency landing. So
they're kind of forced to land down by the starfighters. And they get off the ship, and they're attacked by assassin droids. So, and, of course, Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon make easy work of these assassin droids. But in the meantime, the pilot disappears, and Qui-Gon tries to communicate with Yoda, tries to contact Yoda, and the communication is down. So, they realize they're walking into the kind of city, the market.
Well, hang on. There's one thing here. So
okay.
when they get out of the ship that's surrounded by assassin droids, Qui-Gon says something, oh, I bet they're just here to escort us. Next thing you know, they're being attacked. And after they are all done killing off all these assassin droids, this is a line from Qui-Gon on page 17. So they weren't escorts, he said. I was wrong. It happens.
That's great. See, Qui-Gon, though, that actually, we chuckle about that, but that's a pretty good little piece of Qui-Gon characterization.
A note that I have here is that it seems Jude Watson writes a really good Qui-Gon. Some of these lines here, as you read them, like you can hear Liam Neeson say them. She does a really great job at structuring his dialogue, and just everything he says feels like Qui-Gon.
Absolutely, and I think the part of that is he's admitting his fallibility, and that's what makes him in Episode 1. That's what makes him kind of a revolutionary Jedi in that moment, because the prequels are all about kind of the fall of the Jedi and their hubris, and Qui-Gon is really trying to stay true to the original, or like what he sees as the true pursuit of the Jedi. He talks about the living force, and he doesn't pretend he is kind of wiser than everyone else. And that's not to say that Yoda does, but but it may be to say that Mace Windu does. So it's interesting, and I think I've read some stuff with Qui-Gon where they just kind of write him as a generic wise man, and these books I think do a very good job of avoiding that. So they walk into the kind of market area and they see all these Findians. So they realize
this must be Findar. They're trying to keep a low profile.
And the capital city of Findar is Laressa. And they keep their hoods up. They're keeping a low profile. All the shops are closed, and people's clothes are kind of shabby. There's assassin droids everywhere, and Qui-Gon, who I wrote down in my notes often as QG, the true QG. Murder me, please. He senses, in the people. He says, "Fear, it's everywhere," and so, and then. There are three kind of Findians come through. They're dressed in much nicer clothes, these kind of silver cloaks. And, I wrote that they're kind of on some Beneath the Planet of the Apes type shit. And they're walking through, and all the other Findians move out of the way. And they're all scared of these things. And, Obi-Wan notices that there's kind of a blankness in the regular Findians' eyes, Gold...
A gold speeder zooms around the corner, nearly hitting a child who was being frantically pulled by her mother.
These guys are just motherfuckers. Clearly rich motherfuckers. And, again, kill the rich. That's what Star Wars is about. So, I'm joking. Murder George Lucas, apparently. Anyway, so... They go to the market. They kind of sense darkness from the people in the speeder, and they're wearing these gold robes. They're even more decked out than those silver robe people. And they go to the market and they run into Pilot, and Pilot's like, "Well, I've been looking for you, ha ha ha," basically, and asks them to follow him.
So they go with him to an empty cafe. They have to make sure they're not being tailed by assassin droids. So they go inside this dark cafe. There's only one other person there. He turns around. Surprise! It's Guerrera.
And this is crazy. Guerrera, has apparently stowed away on the ship. And he reveals... He calls Pilot Paxi. And we're like, huh? Who? What? Okay, so your name is Paxi. His name is Paxi Dorita, and he's revealed to be Guerrera's brother. The Dorita Bros! Paxi immediately starts, they're calling, as you know from the last book, Guerrera calls Obi-Wan Obi-Wan. And they also have a name for...
Qui-Gon. Jedi-Gon.
Jedi-Gon. I was so happy about this.
And both of them are jokers. This was a whole scheme concocted by them. The whole reason they're here is because the planet of Findar is being ruled by a crime organization called the Syndicate. And
can I just pause for 1 second?
Yeah, go ahead.
Weird Star Wars spelling. I just have to talk about this. The Syndicate. Syndicat. Now, that word in real life has an E at the end of it. But the E has been removed to make it spacey and science fiction-y. And so, throughout the whole book, I was calling it the Syndicat. It's obviously the Syndicate, but it's very goofy. Anyway, the Syndicate is a vast kind of criminal organization that's taken control of Findar, and it's kind of taken a bunch of resources from the people, food, energy resources, and all that stuff, and hoarded it basically for themselves.
Their leader is a guy by the name of Baf-2, and this is quoted here. He enjoys seeing people suffer, and his girlfriend, Tara, her heart is black and cold. So they kind of rule the Syndicat together, and the way they rule is they create shortages of food, Bacta, as you said, but they keep the people starving and waiting in lines at the market to get what they need to feed their families so that they don't have enough time to revolt against the Syndicate.
And these blank expression people that Obi-Wan noticed earlier, they are known as the Renewed, and they describe them as their memories having been wiped, droid style. And I love this name, the Renewed. It's such a cool, like I mentioned Beneath the Planet of the Apes earlier, or Logan's Run, or the cool 70s dystopian sci-fi thing. As soon as I read that, I was just like, ooh, yes, the Renewed. And I was just imagining a huge mass of people saying, renew, renew, which I think actually might be from Logan's Run. But anyway, so
something that the Syndicate does is they renew their enemies. And something they do for just shits and giggles is they will wipe a person's mind and then drop them on a strange planet so they have no memories, and then they have a probe droid follow them, and members of the Syndicate start betting to see how long the person will last before they're killed.
True assholes we're talking about here. I love that the villains of this series are largely these giant corporations or organized crime and something, and the way they're villains is they just screw people over, taking food. It's really cool. It's actually a really fun aspect of this, and it really kind of enforces the kind of idea of Jedi Knights as kind of protectors of justice. And anyway, so the brothers, they ask the Jedi to help them steal from a food supply spot that the Syndicate has to kind of reveal their shadiness to the people of Findor. And on the side, those bros want to make some money.
Yes, they want to break into the treasury and steal all the money back that was taken from the Findians. So these two they think that this can be accomplished with, of course, Obi-Wan and Jedi-Gon.
But Jedi-Gon is really not feeling this plan. He's like, we got another place to go. You guys kind of kidnapped us, but then they can't keep talking about it because assassin droids come into the cafe and they're after them. They're after all four of them. And they escape through a kind of a secret passage in the back of the cafe, and they have to run away from the droids. And they catch up with Kadi, who is a female Findian, a friend, a fellow freedom fighter of the Dorita brothers. And her father owned the cafe, but has been renewed and sent to
Alba. Jessica
yes.
Alba.
Sorry, I couldn't read my own writing. Sent to Alba, which is a world in the midst of a bloody civil war, and Jedi-Gon was just he was very sympathetic to this. And Kadi kind of mentions that Prince Beju from Gala, which is where Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon were supposed to be going, is on his way to Findor, and was trying to form an alliance with the Syndicate. So this is kind of what pushes Qui-Gon over the top, and he's like, okay, I'll help. And they plan to break into the Syndicate that night.
So they get to the Syndicat HQ, which is an old mansion, and of course they have no problem getting in. Qui-Gon Jedi mind tricks 2 Findian security guards immediately, and boom, they're in. Once they're inside, there's an old woman who's a servant there who escorts the 4 of them, Paxi, Guerrera, Obi-Wan, and Jedi-Gon, down to the storage in the basement. And
this woman's name is Duenna, by the way.
Yes, they reveal that later. That's
really?
the next chapter.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Whatever.
she's like, okay, I have to go. So she runs off. They break into the storerooms, and then they discover the storerooms are empty. And unsurprisingly, they are attacked by guards, assassin droids, but not just guards and assassin droids, but disruptor beams. And disruptor beams are apparently outlawed on most planets, and they're outlawed because they're beams of energy that can easily cut a person into two.
Jeez.
Exactly.
They kind of get, in the midst of all this, they get separated from the bros, our Jedi heroes. And they get chased down by Syndicate guards, and they defeat the guards, in a kind of a big action scene. But after they kind of defeat the last of the guards, they see there's a vault, and they're like, okay, well, we found the vault. And after they find the vault, after they've defeated all the guards, the bros show back up, and they were hiding, of course, because they're cowards. And so
they had this plotted all along. The Jedi were going to do all the work for them.
Of course, and that's, who could blame them? They're Jedi, and they're just simple Findians. So, there's an announcement, kind of like they communicate, like Jedi-Gon kind of impersonates somebody who works in the headquarters, and he's talking over the intercom with someone who warns him that the headquarters are going into lockdown in 10 minutes. And the bros are mentioned, they're really looking for this anti-register device that was designed by Paxi, and Qui-Gon tells them that's very dangerous. The idea is basically that it can kind of override the registration of any technology, so it's easy, you can break into things with it. You can kind of cover up communications.
Right, and they need this device in order to see they can get into the vault. They get into the vault. I have written here it is full of food, meds, treasures, and sleeping platforms. And Qui-Gon mentions it's a sanctuary that they could hide out in for months if they needed to. But beyond this vault is another vault where the treasury is, and that's where all the gold and all the money's at. And this is why they need the anti-registry device in order to break in there and steal all the riches.
Yeah, and so they kind of they realize, well, we only got 10 minutes, so we got to head back. And they meet up with the old woman again, who her name is Duenna, and she informs them that the hoarded supplies have been moved to that they need have been moved to a warehouse by the spaceport, and they're going to be, and most of them will be gifts for Prince Beju when he visits in a couple days. And right as she's kind of telling them this, Tara, the gold wearing woman, the evil Syndicate woman, our
heroes are in disguise, by the way. They steal guard disguises. Continue.
Of course, they stole guard disguises. I apologize for not mentioning that. But Tara shows up and calls after Duenna, and so they hide. Our heroes all hide, and Duenna is talking to Tara, and Tara kind of interrogates her and says, she doesn't give up the bros or our heroes. She's asking where are, Paxi and Guerrera, and Duenna's just like, I don't even know, I didn't even know they were back on Findor, basically. So, the party's able to escape, but the bros reveal a huge thing. Duenna is their mother, and Tara,
which is the next big reveal.
This is a massive reveal. Tara, the evil woman, is their sister. Is also Duenna's daughter. And so they talk about how Tara was renewed when she was 11 years old, and then was kind of raised into the Syndicate. This is, a devastating backstory.
It's heartbreaking.
And this really, not a lot of time is really devoted to that in the book, but it's very effective. We'll get to kind of where that ends up, but It's very. I was very moved by it.
Same.
So at this point, they go back to Cotty's house, and they're staying there. And Obi-Wan and Guerrera, Obi-Wan's been kind of annoyed with Guerrera because he's realizing that Guerrera does lie a lot, little white lies, and he always kind of reveals the truth almost immediately. But on page 72 and 73,
I was hoping we would read this.
Yes. They talk. They kind of have a heart-to-heart, and I think it's really nice. Like this, Obi-Wan's friendships that he's built in these books so far, Trimba, and now I think really especially Guerrera, I find very moving. And so 1 second here. Here we go.
All right. This is 2 page. I actually have the whole 2 pages here, 72 and 73. I want to read here.
All right. Why don't you read Guerrera, and I'll read Obi-Wan. How about that?
Okay. Are you awake, Obi-Wan? Guerrera whispered from the blanket next to him.
Yes, Obi-Wan said. Yes, Obi-Wan answered softly.
Yes, so, I thought, Guerrera said. I heard you thinking. You still angry with me?
I'm not angry with you, Guerrera, Obi-Wan said. Maybe I was impatient with you. You never tell the whole truth.
Not so, Guerrera whispered. Oh, I lie. You are right, Obi-Wan. You are always. I sense that you do not agree with the decision of Jedi-Gon to help us.
Not so, Obi-Wan said. Or so. Maybe I lie.
Ah, you tease me, Guerrera said mournfully. And I deserve this from you, I know.
Why didn't you tell me about your sister? Obi-Wan asked.
Tara, Guerrera murmured. He let out a gusty sigh. She is our enemy, is she not? And yours. Yet it was not always so. You must believe this. If you could have known her as a child, sunny and bright and eager and funny, she was our tag-along. We called her my good brother Paxi and I. Bath, too, took all the good and erased it, and then filled the spaces with hate. You see why I must crush them, Obi-Wan? This is why Duenna risks so much. She and Paxi think, if the Syndicate is no more, they can reach Terra again.
Do you think so? Obi-Wan asked.
Guerrera sighed. No, friend, he said. I do not, but I hope so, just as my family does. In some cases, strong-minded beings can resist the effects of the memory wipe. They can hold on to flashes of memory, just scraps of things, the face, a smell, a feeling. I fear it is not so for Terra. It has been so long for her. I have not the belief that my good brother does. I have only this tiny hope in my heart.
It's something to hold on to, Obi-Wan said.
Yes, so, Guerrera said quietly. If so, I tricked my friend. If I maybe did not tell him everything in the beginning, maybe my good friend Obi-Wan will understand and grant me his help again.
A pause stretched between them. Obi-Wan's irritation at Guerrera left in a rush. He saw the terror and pain that Guerrera had lived with. Just as on the mining platform, when Guerrera had covered his fear of certain death with smiles and jokes, here on Findar he would do the same. Qui-Gon had been right to help them. Obi-Wan knew that now. Of course I will help you, he whispered, but Guerrera was already asleep. See, that's great. That's just really good character work, and this is the thing that I'm excited about with this podcast, because these kinds of books do not need to be good.
I know.
Nobody would have cared if these books sucked. Nobody would have been like, oh, they're really screwing up the Star Wars license over at Scholastic. Nobody cares. Scholastic also published, Wario Land 4 novelizations. No, there was not a quality control there. And I just appreciate Jude Watson, and I appreciate the Lucasfilm editorial team. Stuff like that is just very impressive. So anyway, they have this kind of heart-to-heart, and our four heroes the next morning, they had to go get the anti-register device. They've stolen those that armor. Where was I? The warehouse that Duenna told them about. They head over to the warehouse that Duenna told them about to look for the anti-register device, and they're in the stolen armor, and they're actually able to find it. Find the register device pretty easily, but the syndicate is looking for the guards that are supposed to be in Guerrera's stolen. The guard that's supposed to be in Guerrera's stolen armor suit, and they've kind of split up. Like Guerrera and Obi-Wan found the register device, and Qui-Gon is back with Paxi, watching guard, I believe. And so Obi-Wan, Obi-Wan realizes they're coming. They're coming for Guerrera, so they switch armor suits. And Obi-Wan is just like, "I'll take the fall if I need to. Guerrera, you need to get out of here with that device. That's the most important thing." And so, and this is a great tie-in to that earlier conversation. Like, he cares about his friend, and so Obi-Wan switches into the different armor suit, and they show up. It's and he kind of turns himself in basically because he doesn't have time to escape, and so he turns himself into the Syndicate guards.
Yes, and this is where they then take Obi-Wan to the mansion, which they broke into earlier, where he is taken before Baftu and Terra. So basically there's a security guard who's just like, "Hey, we found this guy. We don't know what his deal is," because Obi-Wan has been silent this whole time. He's not making eye contact with anybody. He's just keeping his head down. So this head of security brings him to Baftu and Terra. And while he's in their room, he hears that Terra and Baftu are arguing. And what they're arguing about is the fact that Terra does not trust Prince Beju. She believes that there are too many shortages here on Findar, and that the people are bound to revolt. That Baftu should not be expanding his whole plan here is to, of course, betray Prince Beju and then take over Gala, and Terra does not think this is a good idea. So
1 second before, I do want to just make note of this. On page 81, when Wueta first arrives with Obi-Wan at Baftu's office, Baftu says, "Excuse me, head slug," Baftu said in a purring, murderous tone. "Are you still here in my line of sight, or do I need to impale you on an electro jabber until you shake yourself to death?" I felt like that needed to be read. So anyway,
that shows Terra, just how bad this dude is.
Terra is very suspicious about Prince Beju and this whole plan, but Baftu leaves, and leaving Terra to deal with Obi-Wan. And Terra just looks at him and is like, "Hey, the punishment for breaking into this place is obviously renewal. This is terrifying to Obi-Wan, of course." And on page 84, there's a really beautiful section here. He says, she tells him, "You'll be renewed and transported off planet." Obi-Wan did not move a muscle, but inside he cried out. Renewed! He did not imagine this. He was prepared to withstand torture, but to have his memory gone? That was too painful to imagine. Terra sighed. She looked weary, and Obi-Wan suddenly saw a glimpse of the girl she had been. She looked away into the distance. "Don't worry, Rebel. It's not as bad as people say." Perhaps seeing traces of Guerrera and Paxi in her features made Obi-Wan feel he could risk a question. "Do you miss your family?" She stiffened for a moment. He expected a blow, waited for it. But instead, Terra turned to him. Her bleak gaze held a sadness that was full of empty spaces. "How can you miss what you do not remember?" she asked. See, this is really it was that moment when we find out about her, and there's one moment later, and that's really it, but it's actually very economical and very emotional material. So, Qui-Gon is really pissed off at Guerrero for
He's
letting Obi-Wan
steaming
go.
mad.
And so he and Guerrero's was like, and he wants to go save Obi-Wan immediately, but Guerrero's like, you can't get into the headquarters after hours, even with the anti-register device. And so the bros send a signal to their mother, Duenna, to have her watch after Obi-Wan and report to them in the morning about what's happening. And so, I also had to point out on page 87.
We have a Yoda quote
here. There's a great little moment where kind of Qui-Gon's reflecting on this, on his anger, and about his regret, and like he should have been there with Obi-Wan and he wouldn't have been taken. And he's remembering something Yoda said to him. He said, "Make the decision, make another." Yoda always said, "Remake one past, you cannot." That's a good Yoda line. We talk about bad Yoda lines, but that's a really good one.
And you know what? There's only a couple Yoda lines in this book. And something I wanted to bring up here is about this Yoda segment of the bad lines. Something we haven't discussed. What if, we're going to do a lot of Jude Watson. What if Jude Watson is really good at writing Yoda? And
it seems like she is, I have to say.
Yeah, in this book, we have no bad Yoda. And
there's all the Yoda is very strong.
Yeah, I agree. So this segment we may have to craft a little bit, or it might not do it all the time.
We'll have to rethink it and figure it out. Maybe it's just, if it applies, we'll bring it up.
Okay,
if there's bad Yoda, we'll talk about it. But if not, there's no reason to make it a all the time segment. But we'll have fun with it when we can. So anyway, Obi-Wan is back kind of in his cell, and he's terrified, of course, but he kind of pulls out the stone from the River of Light on Qui-Gon's home planet that he got at the beginning of the book, and he kind of just rubs it between his fingers, and it's kind of giving him, some strength. And when the guards show...
He claims it's giving him a warm feeling, and that it's starting to glow, and he believes that this rock may be force sensitive.
Yeah, boy. So the guards then show up to his cell, and he's actually not afraid, in the same way he was anyway. And so he's prepared, he feels like. So meanwhile, Qui-Gon and the brothers, they meet with Duenna the next morning. In the market, and she says that, Beju is arriving tomorrow, Prince Beju is arriving tomorrow, and Obi-Wan has already been renewed and sent off planet. And she's like, I've never known them to work this fast, and Qui-Gon is devastated, of course. And he's kind of sitting back at Cadi's house, and he kind of just is like, you know what, but I failed, but we still have to save him. And he creates a plan to have kind of the rebels that Cadi knows rush the warehouses to create a distraction while they use the anti-register to break into HQ and kind of ruin this diplomatic plan. And, hopefully at that point then he can find out where Obi-Wan went and all that. And
something I want to say here too is, Qui-Gon is he's basically planning this uprising, and from the last book we know that this is not the first uprising that Qui-Gon has caused. He caused the uprising on Xanatos' home planet, which is do you remember it?
Oh, Xanatos' planet? Not offhand,
Anyway, but Qui-Gon caused an uprising on that planet, which of course resulted in Qui-Gon killing Xanatos' father. So
Xanatos' planet is Telos.
Telos, that's it. So Qui-Gon seems to have an expertise in creating a ruckus or an uprising or just war, apparently.
And this is actually kind of interesting because I think Qui-Gon, he talks about the kind of Jedi party line of we can't interfere, this kind of Star Trek The Next Generation type prime directive bullshit. And but if you even look at episode 1, he's just like, we aren't in the business of freeing slaves. He's just like, but, I'll free Anakin. And, like, yeah, I mean, he does stick to that to some degree. He doesn't free his mother, and, but that's largely just because, he can't be attached. So it's interesting. Like, I think there's a lot of interesting stuff with Qui-Gon. So in the next chapter, this is the best chapter of any of the books so far.
I agree.
This is the best writing in any of the books so far. The first several pages of chapter 15, beginning on page 96. Obi-Wan's kind of exhausted and he's sick in the transport, but his memory is not wiped. And there's kind of a sort of flashback sequence that's like about how he was able to withstand the renewal ceremony, and it's incredible. It talks about his past, and it's just these little fragmentary kind of images that the writing really conjures. And I'm not going to read the whole thing, but there is a lot there, and
well,
that is very impressive.
He uses the Force to build walls inside his mind to protect his memories. So as he's got these walls built up and he can feel the pressure of this memory wipe droid that they have, who they've put like electrodes on the side of his head. As this droid is trying to wipe his mind, he has this mental struggle that he's fighting. And I mean, we get some great memories here. So you want to go ahead with what you were going to say?
Yeah, there's just, the writing here is just really great. We get these little snatches of memories, and
we have a Yoda quote here.
Yeah, so let's start here. On
97.
On page 97, the droid activate...
Oh, go.
What's that?
Okay, you go ahead.
Where were you starting?
I was going to start at the third line of page 97.
Okay, let me see.
It's a Yoda quote.
I see it. I'm just
okay.
I'm wondering how long this section is in general.
Oh, I'll just read this one.
It's
little
like
part.
4 pages, so yeah, I don't.
Yeah.
But all right.
His first day at the temple, he had been so young and frightened. His first glimpse of Yoda coming forward to greet him, his heavy-lidded eyes looking sleepy. "Far to come, far to go it is," he said. "Cold and warm it is. Seek what you are looking for, you will. Find it here. You shall listen." Oh, you shall listen. Another great Yoda writing.
See, yeah, it's really emotional, and like it even references his family. Like, here's one: a visit home, his mother, softness and light, his father, a laugh, full-bodied, joined by his mother's, just as full, just as rich, his brother, sharing a piece of fruit with him, the explosion of sweet juice in his mouth, soft grasses underneath his bare feet. Like, this is not the kind of writing you get in this sort of book, usually. And this is interesting, and we'll talk more about it a little bit later. Owen. His brother's name was Owen. We'll talk about that later. This sequence is just, it's a tour de force from Jude Watson. It's an incredible, just 5 pages of these just snatches of memory, and you get the sense of, what he's really remembering it all for. And like, we talk about the Jedi and how they don't form attachments and all this stuff, but it's still about a life lived and a life well lived, and you shouldn't have these unhealthy attachments, but you still need to interact with people. That's what Qui-Gon's idea of the living force is all about. It's not just about being this austere group of kind of, monks living off, away from the world. Anyway, moving on. The planet they send him to is Gala, where they were supposed to go in the first place. And this is, a bit of a coincidence, but it's, the Force. Thank the Force. The capital of Gala is Galu, and I just want to say one thing. The Gala people are Galatians, I think.
Yeah.
how you would say it. It's not spelled like the kind of historical Galatians from like the Bible, but it is like Paul's letter there too. But it's spelled Galacins. So I'm saying Galatians. It's making me chuckle. But anyway,
So
Obi-Wan's kind of escorted out of the ship once they arrive on Gala by a probot. And, you know, this one Galatian citizen comes up to him and he calls him a hill person.
Yeah, I wrote this down as I wrote this down that Obi-Wan encounters a racist here.
Yeah, but I wonder if the hill person is really a rich person. The context. I mean, I'm not saying it's, you know, okay to just attack a person, but I'm wondering if that's what it is, and it's not necessarily a race thing. But I'm curious.
That could be.
And we'll find out more probably in the next book. But he's about to beat Obi-Wan up, but Obi-Wan kind of jokes his way out of it by like kind of going along with his racism or classism or whatever it is. And Galu, the town, is pretty run down, you know, and Obi-Wan kind of senses, rather than fear like there is on Findor, he senses an overwhelming feeling of anger amongst the people. And, you know, he realizes, you know, he's not acting kind of dead-eyed enough for the probot to not be able to notice that the renewal didn't take. So he realizes he has to lose the probot, and he kind of goes through a big rigmarole. He crashes into some fruit stands or something.
Dives into a kitchen. And he's able
to lose the probot eventually, and he heads for the palace at Gala, where he's not far from. And the palace is next door to a spaceport, and he spots Prince Beju about to board his ship for Findor. Because he's heading there soon, and Prince Beju gets on the ship. None of his guards.
And he just so happens to be about the same age and the same height as Obi-Wan. So you might see where this is going. So Obi-Wan, before the pilot or any of the guards get on the ship, the prince is on the ship, Obi-Wan hops aboard, and he hijacks the ship, and he takes off.
And so, and he like uses some of Beju's headdress and as a way to kind of fool the guards on the ground into thinking, well, I guess he just wants to fly himself. So
anyway, Obi-Wan takes off with the ship, and then he talks to the prince, and basically what he does is he shoves the prince into a cargo hold in the ship, and he lands on Gala. So meanwhile, the plan is coming together with Jedi-Gon, Guerrera, and Paxi, and they are waiting at the warehouse for the prince's ship to arrive. So the prince's ships arrive, and when the prince steps out, Qui-Gon immediately notices that it's Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan's alive, and through their connection in the Force, Qui-Gon is able to reach out to Obi-Wan and know that Obi-Wan has withstood the renewing process, and that Obi-Wan still has all his memories, and Qui-Gon is overjoyed by all of this. So
yeah, that's a beautiful little moment, and you know, Baftu shows up to greet Obi-Wan as Prince Beju, and Baftu being the leader of the Syndicate, we haven't talked that much about him, but, you know, very evil man. So
hang on.
And thankfully it wasn't Tara who Obi-Wan's like, she would recognize me immediately. So.
Hang on. I have to go back to page 109. This is completely backtracking here, but I just see something I have underlined in the book. This is when Obi-Wan is on the ship and he's about to talk to the prince. When he opens the door, the prince was reclining on a sleep couch when he entered.
Yes, the sleep couch.
Yes, fast forward. So
Baftu, so it's good that Baftu is the one who shows up to greet Obi-Wan and not Tara, who would recognize him immediately. And Obi-Wan's able to convince Baftu to load the Bacta that they had agreed to give to Beju, who thinks that giving the people of his planet, Gala, the Bacta, a new Bacta supply would help him in the election coming up. So, but he agrees to have him load the Bacta immediately, which would be in the middle of the day, and the people of Findor might see this. And the original QG and the Bros, they break into the HQ when after this, and it worked. The device worked, and and so they break in. Baftu and Beju show up, quote unquote Beju. Obi-Wan, we know, is the true Beju, but Tara is also there, and she recognized Obi-Wan immediately, and she says, "You are not Prince Beju." And so Obi-Wan is seemingly fucked. But he's kind of able to bluff his way through her accusatory tone, mostly because Baftu is an asshole who clearly doesn't like Tara, doesn't treat her well. And, they head down to the treasury, and everything's gone. And
Yeah.
Baftu's like, "Tara, that's why you accused this great prince of not being who he says he is because you've been stealing." And he and you can take over here. This is an emotional moment.
So it's at this moment, Baftu, he turned, he nodded at the assassin droid. It happened before anybody could move or even blink. The assassin droids fired in their blasters at Tara. There was a moment where she stood, her expression blank and uncomprehending. "You fool!" she said to Baftu, and she fell. Baftu stepped over his body as if it was stray garbage on the street. He placed his hand on Obi-Wan's elbow. "Come, Prince Beju, I have taken care of the matter." The traitor. So, meanwhile, Obi-Wan and Guerrera are kind of watching out. Qui-Gon sent Paxi to the warehouse to lead the revolt there while that's all going on. So Qui-Gon and Guerrera see this whole thing. As soon as they were out of sight, Guerrera and Qui-Gon rushed into the sanctuary. Tara lay in the doorway of the treasury room. Guerrera knelt next to her. Tenderly, he reached one long arm underneath her body and raised her to cradle her against him. Tara looked up at him. The light in her bright orange eyes was fading. "You don't remember me," Guerrera said brokenly. Tara's eyes cleared for a moment. They blazed brightly as the memory rushed back in. "Not so, brother," she said softly. She reached up, a trembling hand touched Guerrera's cheek. "Not so." Her eyes fluttered closed. She curled one arm around Guerrera's neck, rested her head against him, and died.
Oh. See, we gave you the
Tragic.
entire Tara story, basically, because it's that powerful. I was almost broken up there.
I know. That's why this book rules.
This book is so good.
rules so hard.
We're kind of moving into the final climax, and Qui-Gon and Guerrera, they go out, into the public area, and Cadi's kind of revolutionaries are all in place, and Qui-Gon sees Obi-Wan as he's getting back right around the ship, and he looks at him and he nods, and Qui-Gon's kind of stolen back his lightsaber, I should say, from the supply closet or whatever, and he nods at Obi-Wan, and he's just like, "You know what to do," and he throws him his lightsaber, and an all-out battle ensues.
Yep. Guerrera in this moment is dual-wielding a blaster and a crossbow, and he is just haying people down. And so all chaos ensues. Is it Cody, the female Guerrera?
Cody,
She gets shot. Paxi has to like help her out. Qui-Gon goes over to make sure she's okay. He gets a medic over to her, and it's just at that moment that they realize that Baftu is trying to escape on Prince Beiju's ship, and Guerrera yells at the guards and says, "Look, your leader is abandoning you." And it's at that moment that all of the Syndicate guards rush into the ship and grab Baftu and drag him out. And Guerrera puts a gun against Baftu's head and says, "You are under arrest by the people of Findar."
Oh. Guerrera is legitimately, he's becoming one of my favorite Star Wars characters. I love him. This moment is so cool. And, in all this kind of chaos, Prince Beiju must have gotten out of he must have escaped from Qui-Gon, or from Obi-Wan's restraints, and he takes off with the ship and he escapes. And Qui-Gon's like, let him go. That's a whole other story, a.k.a. the next book.
Mark of the Crown.
Anyway, so at this point, they won this battle, and Yoda has Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan stay back for a week or so to kind of let the provisional government get started, and they're going to hold elections in a month, and they're saying goodbye to the bros before they leave, and they have a new transport, and both brothers, both of the Derrida brothers are like joking about how they're both going to run for governor of the planet. Which, I hope that I hope they come back to Findor at some point in the series, and Guerrera is the governor of Findor.
Yes,
I would be so happy. I would love if that happened in like Jedi Quest or something like that. Like
I agree.
That far into the future. I would love to see Obi-Wan reconnect with this friend like 10 years later.
I agree. I mean, and I agree too that like Guerrero would be governor, not Paxi. No shots against Paxi.
Paxi is, he's definitely like a cabinet member, that kind of.
And something cool that Paxi does is he takes the memory wipe droid and he destroys it and displays it in the center of town for everyone to see and rejoice.
Oh, that's true art right there. So at this point, they're about to leave. They kind of get on. They're heading to Gala, and like Obi-Wan's very nervous, of course, because he's had a lot of dealings with Prince Beiju. He's like, I hope he doesn't win the election. Qui-Gon's like, you gotta be impartial and all that stuff. We'll see about that. But Obi-Wan also tells Qui-Gon that the stone really helped him survive the renewal, the stone that he gave him, and he's just like, I didn't know it was force sensitive. And Qui-Gon's just like, I don't know, what are you talking about? I thought it was just a stone. Like, I thought it was just a stone. So he's playing coy. Maybe we're going to find out more about that. I'm very excited. And that's kind of how the book ends. And, he says, they started up the entry ramp. A smile stole over Obi-Wan's face. Another mission lay ahead. Perhaps through its trials, he would grow to understand Qui-Gon. But somehow he thought not. It would likely take a lifetime before he figured his master out. So that's great. I'm very excited. The next book in the series is The Mark of the Crown, which we will be getting to in 2 weeks. But we'll talk about that in a minute.
Too, I think has like the hardest cover out of any of these books.
Oh, I'm very excited. I'm not as much as I enjoyed The Hidden Past. I have to say, actually, I think it has a pretty terrible cover.
I agree. It's pretty bad.
I'm not a fan, but this book was really good, and we have our patented 1 to 10 rating scale of midi-chlorians, and 10 being Yoda, did we decide? Yoda is number 10? Is Yoda to Bruck Chun at 1. And, again, we're still defining everything, but what rating out of 10 midi-chlorians would you give The Hidden Past?
Well, we have 10, and then we have Conceived in Midichlorians, which is Anakin. This book is amazing, but I am not ready to give out a Conceived in Midichlorians ranking, so I'm giving this book, a Yoda, a 10 out of 10.
You know what? I I hate that we've agreed on the ratings, I think, for all 3 books so far. Is that true?
I think so,
or
yeah.
were we one off on one?
No, we were one off on the last one. I gave it a 6, you gave it a 7.
Okay, then I don't feel too bad about this. This is 10 midichlorians. This is Yoda. It's like, Master Yoda, is at work in this book. So, I really enjoyed it. I think Jude Watson, the writing in Dark Rival was good. She stepped up her game in this. Chapter 15 is some of the best writing I've read in any Star Wars book, period. It's truly great stuff. So I really loved it. The Hidden Pass. This series is just getting better and better. I've enjoyed all 3 of them a lot, but this one is just...
I know. I can't wait for the next... how many books? We got 15 books left. I'm so excited to get through these books. We got 15 books plus
some special editions, Jedi Quest. Jude Watson is truly a Star Wars legend in more ways than one. So, we have 2 segments to get to before the end of the episode, and I wanted to first talk about kind of our Wikipedia deep dive. And normally this is so far... Wikipedia, I apologize. We've done kind of goofy stuff like the sleep couch and stuff. This I thought was just kind of interesting. In that 15th chapter of The Hidden Pass, there's a reference to Obi-Wan's brother, and they say his name is Owen. Now, I thought this was interesting because I was like, isn't there something about, in like the original Star Wars novelization, they refer to Owen Lars, Uncle Owen, as Obi-Wan's brother. So, and I looked it up. I looked up Owen Kenobi on Wikipedia, and there is a page. It's a Legends page. It's called Owen, and then in parentheses, Kenobi. And here's what it says. It says, Owen was the perceived brother of Jedi Master Obi-Wan Kenobi, seen through a vision from the Force. In reality, Kenobi was actually seeing Owen Lars, Anakin Skywalker's stepbrother. History. While Obi-Wan Kenobi was born to parents on the planet Stujon, he was identified as Force-sensitive as an infant and was quickly taken to the Coruscant Jedi Temple for training in the ways of the Force by the Jedi Order. Despite this, during his apprenticeship to Jedi Master Qui-Gon Jinn, Kenobi began having dreams of his parents and of a brother named Owen. Recounting his dreams to his master, Jinn cautioned him that dreams could sometimes be visions of the past or the future. For much of his life before the Clone Wars, Kenobi believed that he must have returned to Stujon early on to meet his parents, thus forming the memory of them and his brother. It wasn't until the first few months of the Clone Wars when Kenobi learned that his Padawan, Anakin Skywalker, had met his stepbrother on Tatooine in the days before he journeyed to Geonosis. After telling Kenobi of meeting Lars and learning of the death of his mother, Shmi, Kenobi began having doubts as to the true identity of his brother Owen. It wasn't until the end of the Clone Wars and the destruction of the Order that Kenobi began connecting all the pieces of this decades-long puzzle. As he fled persecution on Nar Shaddaa with the infant Luke Skywalker in his custody, Kenobi prepared to take the boy to the Larses on Tatooine. Finally, Kenobi concluded that his dreams that he had as a boy were a vision of Owen Lars, his student's stepbrother. The fraternity he felt between himself and Owen was true, from a certain point of view. As Kenobi felt a brotherly bond with his former student, Lars, too, would be his brother. And so that's the story-based stuff, but the behind-the-scenes stuff is really the interesting material here. Behind the scenes, your mother and I knew he would find out eventually, but he wanted to keep you both as safe as possible for as long as possible. So I took you to live with my brother Owen on Tatooine, Obi-Wan Kenobi to Luke Skywalker in the Return of the Jedi novelization. The idea that Obi-Wan Kenobi and Owen Lars, the adoptive uncle of Luke Skywalker, were brothers was introduced into the screenplay of the 1983 movie Star Wars Episode VI, Return of the Jedi, but did not make it in the final cut. The movie novelization, however, did include a line in which Kenobi referred to his brother Owen. Similarly, Owen Lars was explicitly described as the brother of Obi-Wan Kenobi in the premiere limited set of the Star Wars customizable card game released by Decipher Inc. in 1995. Said brother, named Owen, was later alluded to in the 1999 novel Jedi Apprentice, The Hidden Past, during a dream of Kenobi's. However, the 2002 movie, Star Wars Episode II, Attack of the Clones, revealed Luke's uncle as Anakin Skywalker's stepbrother rather than Kenobi's brother. Abel G. Pena's short story, Lone Wolf, A Tale of Obi-Wan and Luke, released online in 2015, explained Kenobi's dreams as a vision of his future rather than a relic of his past. And that's, I guess, one of the last legend stories. So I thought that was interesting.
That is very interesting. I had no clue.
So I remember hearing about that, in the Jedi novelization. I thought it was the New Hope novelization. But I think it's interesting that really wasn't finalized until Attack of the Clones, to the point where he's referred to as his brother in this book that came out in 1999. I thought that was incredibly fascinating. So, yeah, and these are the kinds of things I'm hoping to do a little more of. Like, I like the goofy stuff, but there is a lot of fun behind-the-scenes stuff, like weird, changing canonical things that I'm always going to be interested in. So, to wrap up the show today, we have a letter from the mailbag. We still don't have a name for this segment, but we have a letter from the mailbag. Same guy, our friend, Sam Lando McCauley, sent us another question. Just came through. Oh boy. He wants to know, what kind of Star Wars role or character would you like to see Vin Diesel play?
Okay, Vin Diesel, a Gamorrean guard.
Gamorrean guard? Do you want to see him play that as a real character, not just a background guy? A real character. I kind of like that idea, because
that's the first thing that popped in my head is Vin, because I picture him as just as a Groot kind of character. But as a Star Wars character, I'd be more interested in seeing Vin Diesel play an alien than a human. And if I had to pick any creature, it would be a Gamorrean guard.
That's interesting. You said the Gamorrean guard kind of reminded me of oh God, kill me. What are the Emperor's guards' names?
The Royal Guards, yeah, those guys.
So the Royal Guards, the guard the Emperor, are a fascinating thing to me. And you reminded me of that when you just talked about guards, and I was thinking, it's not great, but there was a Dark Horse comic book called Crimson Empire back in the 90s that was about those characters and how they were kind of the most evil, they were most in on the Emperor's secrets, in on Sheev's secrets. And Vin is not a great actor, but he can be a lot better than he often is. I actually think he's very good in the first Fast and the Furious, and he's very good in the Sidney Lumet movie, Find Me Guilty. He's not a bad actor. I just, so I think maybe, a character like that would be a lot of fun to explore that side of things,
I'm trying to think, wasn't there, I'm trying to think, there's, a named character that, I'm thinking of who was an Imperial Guard, who was a Royal Guard, and, his name is, completely eluding me now.
Well, yeah,
I'll have to Wikipedia it, but, yeah. But that's actually a really good idea. I like that idea way better than a Gamorrean Guard, but that would be a really great role.
But, he could play any number of certain... I agree. I don't want to... obviously a lot of his... people that don't like Vin Diesel, probably what they most like him in is, the Iron Giant and Guardians of the Galaxy, where he has very limited things, so they think of him playing creatures or robots. But I do think he could play a real character, not that those aren't real characters, but you know what I mean. He could play a character that is asked to speak. And I I would like to see. I don't know if I'd like to see it. I'm not sure he's the right exact vibe. But if he showed up on something like The Mandalorian, I think that would be cool. That's the kind of... I want him in that kind of Star Wars milieu. I feel like he would want to play like a Jedi or something because he's a big fucking...
Isn't it like his dream to be in a Star Wars movie too? Like,
I'm sure it is.
Doesn't he like push really hard for that? Yeah.
He's a massive dork. I'm sure he probably wants to play like a Jedi or something.
Yeah,
which I'm not sure about that. But
he wants to be Mace Windu's son or something.
Well, they have that Triple X connection, so.
Yes, they do.
I want to thank everyone for listening. Next week, we're taking a break from Jedi Apprentice just for 1 week. We're going to try to do 3 on, 1 off. That'll be at least at the start. We're going to try that rhythm. But next week, we're going to have our first guest, and we're going to talk about The Glove of Darth Vader. The first book in the Jedi Prince series, which is 6 books, and we're going to kind of visit those occasionally, save them for when we want a funny episode, because this is some goofy stuff, guys. There's going to be a lot of goofy stuff. So we talked a little bit about the Jedi Prince stuff, I think, last week, but we're going to talk in depth next week about the Glove of Darth Vader. And until then...
May the Force be with you.
And the library is closed? I don't know.
That's a good idea. I like that.
The library is closed. Join the book club. The library is closed.
Oh, yeah.
We'll
Join the book club. Follow us on Instagram. Oh, also, before anything, definitely you need to check this out on Facebook and Instagram. This book came with an iron-on transfer of for like a T-shirt or something of the cover of the first Jedi Apprentice book. And something about me is I am a collector of, in 1999, Lucasfilm made a deal with a company called Liquid Blue. Liquid Blue is a tie-dye company most famously known for like Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, Grateful Dead shirts, anything that's tie-dye and has a print on it. And they did a whole series of Episode 1 shirts. I have a shirt that has Watto on it. I have a shirt, a Queen Amidala's shirt. I have
a Trade Federation transport shirt.
Yeah, I do. So, like, they made shirts of absolutely everything. So, a little video segment we're going to do is I'm going to try to find a tie-dye shirt and iron this Jedi Apprentice iron-on onto it and make a custom tie-dye Star Wars shirt. So definitely check that out. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. If you have questions for our mailbag, email those at Padawan Library. And Padawan Library is, of course, the name of all the other pages. So check that out.
PadawanLibrary@gmail.com.
Join the book club. Go on eBay. Buy Glove of Vader. Read along. Buy it now because they're going to be sparse here pretty soon.
All right, so thank you guys for listening, and the library is closed.
Padawan Library is hosted and produced by Tim May and Levi Peretic. It is edited by Tim May. Our theme song is by the Astral Project. Our artwork is by Freddie Funbuns. Padawan Library is copyright 2019 by Tim May and Levi Peretic. All rights reserved.